Hello, hey, welcome. Hey, this is my Hope of Ghirapur Voltron slash Eldrazi deck tech version 1.0. So because this does have an Eldrazi sub theme to it, you're gonna need ramp. And the ramp in this deck is Everflowing Chalice. It costs 0, but it has multi-kicker 2. Everflowing Chalice enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked. Basically, the way this works is when you play this card, you're gonna pay 2, which is gonna give Everflowing Chalice a counter on it. Then it will be able to tap for 1 mana. But if you pay 4, it'll put 2 counters on it, and then it'll be able to tap for 2 mana later on. If you pay 6, it'll tap for 3, and so on and so forth. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. I hope, maybe. But the next one, Soul Ring, taps for 2 mana for only 1 mana. Thought Vessel, pay 2 for 1, and it allows you to have no maximum hand size. Mind Stone, later on you can sacrifice it to draw a card. Palladium Mirror, it is a creature, so they can kill it easier, but it taps for 2. Worn Power Stone does come in tapped, but for 2 mana, and it only costs 3. That's not a bad trade-off. Basalt Monolith, 3 for 3, but it doesn't untap during your untap step, unless you pay 3, which is fine because we have something to help us out with that later. Unstable Obelisk, later on you can use it to destroy a permanent. Hedron Archive, it can tap for 2. You can also sacrifice this later on to draw 2 cards. Thran Dynamo, paying 4 for 3 is okay with me. Gilded Lotus, Forsaken Monument. This one not only gives all your creatures +2/+2, also, whenever you tap a permanent for colorless mana, you get to add an additional mana. And whenever you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life. Solemn Simulacrum, I don't think I said that right, but Sad Robot, as it's also known, when it enters the battlefield, it lets you search your library for a basic card, put that card into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. And when it dies, you can draw a card. Wayfarer's Bauble, pay 1 to play it, and then later on pay 2, tap, sacrifice it to go search for a basic land and put it into the battlefield tapped. These next 3 cards reduce the cost of artifact spells, just like it says right here. Foundry Inspector, artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Joyrust Familiar, historic spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, which artifacts, legends, and sagas are historic. Conduit of Ruin, not only does this reduce the cost of each creature spell you cast each turn by 2, also when it enters the battlefield, it lets you search your library for a colorless creature with converted mana cost 7 or greater, but you have to reveal it. Shuffle your library and you put it on top of your library. Thran Turbine, during your upkeep, you may add up to 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. This mana can't be spent to play spells. This is in here to help with the equipping costs of all the equipments that I'm gonna attach to my commander. You just have to make sure that you do it, that you equip your commander during your upkeep. Otherwise, the mana that this creates will disappear, will fizzle out, will go bye-bye. And the equipment that I'll be attaching to my commander are Swiftfoot Boots, because it'll give my commander hexproof and haste. Lightning Greaves, to give my commander haste and shroud. This will give my commander a Death Touch, and whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half his or her life, rounded up. Sword of the Animist. It'll give my commander +1/+1, and whenever equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it into that field tapped, then shuffle your library. And then I have Sword of War and Peace. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and white. Also, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of War and Peace deals damage to that player equal to the number of cards in their hand, and you gain a life for each card in your hand. Sword of Feast and Famine gives my commander +2/+2 and protection from black and green. And then whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, and you untap all lands you control. Sword of Fire and Ice. It'll give my commander +2/+2 and protection from red and blue. And whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage to any target, and you draw a card. Sword of Body and Mind. The creature gets +2/+2 and protection from green and blue. Whenever the creature that is equipped deals combat damage to a player, you create a 2/2 green wolf token, and that player mills 10 cards. Sword of Light and Shadow, again, gives my commander +2/+2 and protection from white and black. And when it deals combat damage to a player, you gain 3 life, and you may return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Moon Silver Spear gives my creature first strike, and whenever equipped creature attacks, put a 4/4 angel creature token with flying into the battlefield. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink. Also, you can pay 1, permanents your opponents control lose hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. Grafted Exoskeleton gives my commander +2/+2 and has infect. And then whenever Grafted Exoskeleton becomes untapped from a permanent, sacrifice that permanent. Colossal Hammer, which I'm kind of thinking I may or may not get rid of this in version 2.0, only because it'll lose flying when I attach it to my commander. But it gets +10/+10, but it does cost 8 to equip, so I don't know. We'll see. Dousing Dagger. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent creates 2/0/2 green plant creature tokens with Defender. Gives my commander +2/+1, and then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can transform it into... And that lets you tap it to add 3 mana of any color to your mana pool. You just have to attack once with it. And, deal damage. Hammer of Nazan. This is in there to allow me to attach my equipment onto my commanders for free. Then when this is attached, it gets +2/+0 and has indestructible. Brass Squire. This is also in there to help equip my commander, because I can just tap it and attach equipment you control to target creature you control. And this is the card draw. Mind's Eye, Lore Seeker Stone, Staff of Nim, Seer Sundial, Endless Atlas, Rogue's Gloves, Kozilek the Great Destruction. When you cast it, if you have fewer than 7 cards in your hand, draw cards equal to the difference. This also has Menace, and it lets you discard a card with converted mana cost X to counter target spell with converted mana X. So if your opponent tries to play a 3 mana spell, you can discard a 3 mana card in your hand to counter it. If they try to play an 8 mana spell, discard an 8 mana card to counter that spell. Sandstone Oracle, Mystic Forge. This lets you look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an artifact card or a colorless non-land card. Here we have the destruction cards, I guess. Ways to try to mess with your opponents. We'll go with that. Meteor Golem. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Spine of Ishsha. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. And when this card is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to the owner's hand. Lux Cannon. This one you can tap it to put a counter on it. And then when you have 3 charge counters on it, you can tap it to remove those 3 counters to destroy target permanent. Scour from Existence. Exile target permanent. Seal Hellkite. Pay X, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X, whose controller was dealt damage by Seal Hellkite this turn. Activate this ability only once each turn. All is Dust. Each player sacrifices all colored permanents they control. So this is pretty much a one-sided board wipe. Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. You can +2 it. It deals 3 damage to a target creature or player. Negative exit. Exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less. So this is pretty much in here as a board wipe as well. And then -10. You gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, then put up to 7 permanent cards from your hand to the battlefield. Yeah. And the other Ugin is in here to reduce the cost of colorless spells. But it also lets you exile the top card of your library face down, create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token. When that token leaves the battlefield, put the exiled card into your hand. And you can -3 to destroy target permanent that's 1 or more colors. And now for the Eldrazi. Deceiver of Form. At the beginning of combat on your turn, reveal the top card of your library. If a creature card is revealed this way, you may have creatures you control other than Deceiver of Form become copies of that card until the end of turn. You may put that card on the bottom of your library. Void Winnower. Your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana cost. Your opponents can't block with creatures with even converted mana cost. Bane of Bala Jed, one of those. Whenever it attacks, defending player exiles 2 permanents he or she controls. Pathrazer of Ulamog. It has Annihilator 3, which means whenever this creature attacks, defending player sacrifices 3 permanents. And it can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. If That Betrays also has Annihilator, but for 2. And whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card into the battlefield under your control. Ulamog's Crusher with Annihilator 2, and this attacks each turn if able. Artisan of Kozilek. Whenever you cast a spell, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This also has Annihilator 2. And the Big Mama Jamma, Daddy Pappy, what's it called? I don't know. Emrakul, the Promised End. Emrakul costs 1 less to cast for each card type among cards in your graveyard. And when you cast it, you gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. And after that turn, that player gets an extra turn. Emrakul also has Flying Trample protection from instants. Darksteel Forge, to give my artifacts I control indestructible. Unwinding Clock, to untap all artifacts you control during each other opponent's untap step. This goes really well with Vidalcan Orrery. It lets you cast non-land spells as though they were instants. Or you can cast non-land spells at instant speed. Quicksilver Amulet. It lets you pay for and tap it, and then you can put a creature card from your hand to the battlefield. The lands. For the lands, you can pretty much put whatever you want, whatever you have. But the 3 that I recommend, if you're going to be playing with Eldrazi, are Eye of Ugin, because Eldrazi spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. Pay 7, tap it to search your library for a colorless creatures card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Spawning Bed. Taps for 1 normally, then you can pay 6, tap it, sacrifice it, to put 3 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature tokens onto the battlefield. And they'll have sacrifice this creature to add 1 mana of any color. Add 1 mana to your mana pool. And the last one I would recommend is Eldrazi Temple, because it can tap for 1 generic mana, or it can tap for 2 generic mana if you spend this mana to cast an Eldrazi spell or activate abilities of colorless Eldrazi. And that was my Hope of Ghirapur Voltron / Eldrazi deck tech version 1.0.